Hi, this is Daniela Wolf with Bestie Life, the podcast, and this is your community to support you through the little and not so little events that make up your day-to-day life. From the I've got this moments to the I just can't moments. We are here to empower all women to find and develop the skills they need to find peace, balance, and the bliss in their busy. Through solo episodes as well as interviews with amazing women who share their journey and their story and how it works for you. I hope you find the inspirations to make you laugh, think, as well as maybe rethink what you thought you knew, and connect as we realize that we are all living similar ups and downs and don't have to do it alone. So excited for you to hear this episode, and thanks so much for joining me today. Hi, this is Daniela with Bestie Life, the podcast. And I know a lot of times we talk about what to add to help make your life better, your job better, your workplace better. But what about those things maybe you shouldn't be doing? The things that could even lead you to litigation. I am so excited for you to meet my next guest today, Jacquiline Wagner. For more than 25 years, she is the proud president of Wagner HR and has been representing, advising, and training business owners, employers, supervisors, and HR professionals in all aspects of employment law. Stemming from her seasoned experience, Jacquiline has designed an effective 4-point system that she's going to tell us about today, tailored to cultivate the emotional intelligence of leadership, maximize the full potential of employees, and effectively reduce the risk of employment litigation. Thank you so much, Jacquiline, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
I'm so excited to find out more about this because I know this isn't an area that's commonly talked about. You know, I don't know if you want to call it like the dark side of business, as far as the things that people might be inadvertently doing that can lead them to the extent of litigation, which I think is something we all want to avoid. But before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about your story and your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. For 25 years, I've been an employment litigation attorney. I practice in California, and I have spent my entire career advocating on behalf of business, making sure that I win lawsuits on their behalf. So my wheelhouse is discrimination, harassment, and retaliation lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
And I do well. But the thing that I've noticed through the years is that without exception, the times where an employee ends up suing the employer for discrimination, harassment, retaliation, or wage and hour claims, it's not because there was actually discrimination, harassment, or retaliation. It's because, and I'm not discounting that there are bad behaviors that go on in workplaces, obviously, but the reason employees sue for those things is because there was a lack of emotional intelligence in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
What do I mean by that? Well,
yes.
Okay.
That was my next question. What is emotional intelligence?
All right.
Yes.
So emotional intelligence, the phrase was sort of coined by Daniel Goleman, who is a psychologist and now renowned workplace author. And he argued that in his book of the same title in the 1990s, he argued that more than substantive skills for a person to get ahead at work, they needed to hone what's known as emotional intelligence. And he argues there's 5 components of emotional intelligence. That is your self-awareness, mm-hmm. your empathy, so your ability to relate to others, your motivation, your ability to self-regulate, and your ability to have social skills, so your understanding social cues and things like that. Honing those skills more than your substantive skills will help you get ahead in the workplace. And because typically folks are promoted based on their substantive skills, we end up with workplaces where the folks at the top have really strong substantive skills, but they may not have honed those softer emotional intelligence skills. And so those need to be cultivated to ensure that employees have psychological safety, that they can bring their authentic self to work, that they can bring concerns to work, and that they're guided and taught and trained in a way that maximizes their full potential so that they don't feel resentment, anger, that they're not seen, heard, valued. You want your employees to feel seen, heard, and valued so that they give you their best self. And in doing so, you've got to make sure your leadership's cultivated their emotional intelligence.
And I think this has come to the forefront even more over these last couple of years, where I almost kind of bristle a little bit when you use the term soft skills, because I think they get devalued a little bit as soon as we call it a soft skill. And I think these are becoming necessary skills when it comes to creating that work-life culture, that work-life balance and harmony that employees are not settling for. They are looking for, the kind of an environment that makes them feel good and aren't less tolerable of things that I think were just commonly practiced in the past.
You're absolutely right. And the younger our workforce becomes, the more that becomes true. Folks in my generation were willing to come into the office every day, work till 3 o'clock in the morning on little to no sleep, do it all again the next day just to get ahead. And we're seeing in our younger generation that that's just not the case any longer. And you can be the employer that says, I don't care, this is how we're doing it. But if you're not allowing room to grow and change and evolve, then you're going to be eventually in trouble because you're going to find yourself without any any real go-getter employees, because they will all have left to go somewhere else or work for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. As well as I think, some of my listeners are entrepreneurs, they're building their own business. And I think by integrating this mindset and these cultures from the beginning makes it not only easier to maintain them without having to kind of go backwards and restructure your whole system, but I think it makes you more attractive as a company. I think it's going to help you grow faster, be more successful when you are seen as a company that values not only the work, but the people involved in creating the work.
Agreed. Absolutely. And that has to come from the top down. So when I come into an organization to analyze where there are holes in the pavement, I first start at the top and I want to know what the top thinks, because that way I know what the culture of the place is. It's always the leader, the top leader is always the indicator of what the climate really is. Because if the leader is emotionally intelligent, then the rest of the workplace is going to foster psychological safety for the employees.
Absolutely. And to see that, just even in the hours that the leadership keeps, that when they're sending emails, that kind of thing, it's gonna set the vibe and the tone, even if it's never spoken, directly, it sets that kind of assumed, this is when I expect to see you.
Right. That's correct. Or not even an email in the evening. Who's getting ahead at the corporation? Who's advancing? Who is that leader choosing to lead their teams? Is it the person who is a yeller? Is it the person who uses abusive language? Is it the person who is controlling and micromanaging? Or is it a lovely person who gets the job done, but does it in a way where employees feel comfortable and safe and valued, seen, and heard? That's where I see the culture woven most transparently, is who's advancing, who's getting selected to move up in the corporation or the company.
Right. So when you talk about your 4 point system to help companies kind of fold in and create that workplace culture with high emotional intelligence and things like that, what are those 4 areas that people need to look for?
So there are 4 things that employers need to do to ensure that they are infusing emotional intelligence into the workforce. And those 4 things are making sure the employee handbooks have that message woven through. An employee handbook is a great opportunity not only to recite the law of what the expectations of performance are and what the employer can and cannot do. It's an opportunity for the employer to start weaving in that psychological safety, emotional intelligence, making sure the employee knows they're valued, seen, and heard. And you're doing that with language in the employee handbook, because that's your first entree to communicating with your employees. And then the second pillar of making sure that we're reducing the risk of litigation is effective employee training. Employee training can be a variety of things. It can be professional development, it can be a legal requirement, but it can also be an opportunity to weave in an emotionally intelligent message where an employee feels valued, seen, and heard. Topics that you can choose to train your employees about really matter. If you're hosting a workshop for your leadership that's on cultivating emotional intelligence, and that's on posters throughout the building, that is going to send a message, even without having to conduct the training itself. That sends a message to your employees about what the company culture is about. And then I recommend doing investigations of not only your legal requirements, not only where you're legally required to investigate. For example, we're legally required to investigate when there is an allegation of harassment based on a protected category. That shouldn't be the only place where an employer is bringing in a professional to do a neutral investigation. If that's the only place where the employer is doing neutral investigations, it's going to look perfunctory. It's going to look like it's just a box being checked. But if an employer is doing an investigation when an employee makes any sort of allegation of unfairness, of bias, of conflict, then the employer is sending a clear message. And an investigation like that is not going to be cost prohibitive. A multi-party, multi-person investigation about sexual harassment or harassment based on a protected category, that's more expansive. That's legally required. But a small mini investigation about where there's a conflict in the workplace, you can send a message just by conducting that investigation that your employees' concerns are valid and heard. And then the fourth pillar that I recommend is having some sort of conflict resolution program in place. This is virtually unheard of. Most of the time, we rely on our employees to sort of solve the problems themselves. If we have conflict between 2 employees that are at the same level as each other, we sort of say, you're adults, figure it out. But if we're able as an employer to foster that conversation and sow harmony between those 2 employees, then you're going to be not only sending a message that the employees' concerns are valued, seen, and heard, but you're also going to be sending a message that conflict resolution is valuable and that you want a harmonious workplace.
Yeah. And one of the themes I see through all those 4 pillars is the communication, involving communication, whether it's written, whether it's verbal, whether it's encouraging dialogues, communication of some sort is going to be key to helping to maintain that transparency, it sounds like, and that employee culture that you're looking for. When it comes to the conflict resolution, just curiously, is there a model that you see that works typically well, or are there a variety?
A mediation type model works really, really well, where
Mm-hmm.
you have both employees sort of tell their story in front of each other from their
Mm-hmm.
perspective. That's kind of like a joint session. And then breaking out into breakout rooms where you're kind of toggling back and forth, where the professional that you've brought in is sort of a mediator going from the back and forth from room to room and negotiating with the employees about what they exactly are looking for, right? So Lori heats up her fish every day in the microwave. It's making me nauseous. I hate it. I'm talking about a really
Yeah.
trivial issue.
No, but I
Um,
can relate to that.
and I hate it. It makes me nauseous. Can you please have her stop doing that? And then Lori's got her own gripe about, well, she taps her pen in her cubicle all day and I can't concentrate. And then you sort of, as you're talking to the two people, you're realizing that they're being retaliatory against each other. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you get them to see that, when you get them to see that they are being petty and they're not being good coworkers and that they themselves could do better, you're sending a message that you expect psychological safety for each other, that you expect better behavior, and you can get them to kind of see what they're doing and then to kind of negotiate. All right, Lori, can you agree that you'll heat up your sandwich, your fish sandwich earlier in the day before folks get there, and it'll still be kind of warm by lunchtime, and then can you stop tapping your pen during the day? Such a simple
Yeah.
example, but that's how I like to do it. I like to mediate between the two parties of a resolution that they'll both be equally unhappy with and
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Yeah, but definitely, like you said, even that involves continued communication and whatnot. How, and I don't know if this is something that comes up, but employers are adding more EAP programs. They're adding a lot of things to try and be helpful and, supportive of their employees and their employees' needs. And I see, though, that there's still sometimes fear to accessing these things, fear to using it because of our own, ingrained limiting beliefs and judgments that nobody else might have, but we assume, oh, they're going to think blah, blah, blah if I use this service and things like that. Have you seen that in as well as you're improving company cultures, and how, if there's strategies to kind of overcome that?
I think the best way to overcome that is to ensure confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
So the messaging has to be that accessing those benefits are confidential, and they really have to be. That's why you really have to have a third party provider
So
that
not
the
even your own HR person, but somebody outside the
yes,
company.
you've
Okay.
got to have a third party provider that the employee can kind of call 1-800 number and access. And then the company gets the bill, gets the invoice rather, and the name of the employee is anonymous, but based on HIPAA law. And that is really the only infrastructure that's most effective, is to ensure confidentiality. And then, as I was saying before, if your leadership is talking about accessing those services, right? So you may want to have your top person give a message out to the employees by video, or having a conference or a Zoom or something, where the leader is saying, look, I access these services. We pay a premium every month. I don't want the premium to go to waste. Please do access them if you need them.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of taking away the stigma away from accessing those benefits.
Okay. Awesome. So definitely, re-listen to that. If you're starting your own business, if you work at a company, even, you don't always have to be a boss, an entrepreneur. Are these things that are currently in place at your business? And if not, try to see how you can work towards having them in place to create a more inclusive, a more emotionally intelligent workplace workplace culture. So as a owner yourself, Jacqueline, how do you help not only take care of your employees, but take care of yourself?
So I make sure that my employees, as you said, communicate with me. If they're having an issue at home, or they need time off, or they need to have a flexible schedule, what have you, please communicate with me. Don't try to do something on your own as your own silo. 9 times out of 10, if you're communicating with your leader, that's going to win the day. You're going to get whatever it is that you're asking for because you effectively communicated. And then for myself, I take very good care to ensure that I'm cultivating good energy all the time. So I meditate, I journal, I listen to podcasts that are uplifting, like this one. And I try to keep positivity woven through my day throughout the day. And if I need little reminders throughout the day, I'll put on something, listen to it, or I'll use the Calm app and take a moment and meditate. And then I also recommend yoga. It's very grounding and settles the mind by force, because you're forced to work on your breathing, and it settles the mind. And if you have a racing mind like I do, I highly recommend it.
Awesome. And I didn't even prep her beforehand, but you heard her say throughout her day, she is putting in these moments. So definitely, take that to heart from somebody who's running a successful business, that is a practice that needs to happen every day.
Yes.
I always love to talk about gratitude as well as kind of like an underutilized form of self-care, because I think it's easy to take with us, easy to do. And so I always ask my guests, what are the 2 or 3 things you're the most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for my family, my children, and my husband. I have an amazing husband who's wildly supportive of my career trajectory. I'm very grateful for him. I'm grateful for my children, that they are watching me succeed and succeeding in their own right. I'm grateful for wonderful clients that keep my children fed. And I'm grateful for meaningful work. I'm really lucky, and I know it, that I get to do work that I choose instead of work that I have to do. And I've gotten to forge my own professional journey in a way that most people don't get to. And I know that I'm lucky, and I know that not everybody gets to do that. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
Awesome. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that when I was talking about journaling, that is what I'm journaling. I really believe I practice the law of attraction. And if your listeners don't know what that is, there's an avalanche of information out there if you just Google it. But essentially what the law of attraction teaches is that we bring about what we conjure, and what you're sowing into the world, positivity or negativity, you're going to get that back. That whatever you're throwing out, you're getting back. And so I make it a conscientious, deliberate practice to in the morning, in the middle of the day, in the evening, to journal about that which I'm grateful for, to ensure that that's what I'm putting out into the universe: positivity, gratitude, because I want to get back more of those things. I find that to be an amazing practice. And you're right, during the middle of the day, I'm doing that because I want to keep, what I meditated about in the morning may not last through 6 o'clock in the evening. So I have to sort of remind myself in the middle of the day, and kind of take 5 to ground myself and kind of reconnect to my gratitude. And so I'm doing that by way of journaling, or, as I said, closing my eyes for a moment and meditating about how great I have it.
Yeah, it's like a meditation snack in the middle of the day, So where can people find you? How can they work with you?
So I can be found at my business, Wagner HR, at wagnerhr.com. And you can just drop me an email that's accessible there on the website.
Awesome. And that link will be live in the show below. So thank you so much, Jacqueline, for joining us today. I am so enlightened by a lot of those things because, like I said, a lot of us, we go into business because we're following our passions, but we don't always know all the business stuff to have in place ahead of time. So this is a great kind of pre-awareness to help incorporate as we're growing our businesses.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know any questions or comments that you have. Also, if you can please leave an Apple 5-star review so that this episode can be shared with more women. There's 2 quotes that I love. Alone we may be strong, but together we are stronger, as well as when women support each other, incredible things happen. So let's be stronger and incredible together, as well as maybe just have some fun along the way. Thanks so much and talk to you soon. Bye.